Hello, Sports Dallas Primetime. The Dallas Cowboys have basically declared an open competition at offensive center. And there has been a little bit of speculation going around on social media as to why there is a competition in the first place and who is the driving force behind it. And we will get into that on tonight's show. We will also talk about the Cowboys' needs, the remaining needs specifically after the NFL draft, because there are still some out there. Thank you guys for joining the show. Thank you for being here. Hit the like button, share the stream. If you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, do me a favor and let your friends know about ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. We are ready to get this one going. Let me shout out some of you guys over here on YouTube: Toxic Tom, Charlene Evans, Samuel, Lumen, as always. Gregory, thank you guys for being here. Do me a favor, hit the like button, share the stream. I think we will have fun tonight. Last night, by the way, was a very fun episode. Thank you guys for tuning in. What is up, Steve Miller over at Facebook? Let's get this one started right away, shall we? Here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome into ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. I'm Mauricio Rodríguez, streaming with you live every Sunday through Thursday night at 8 p.m. Central here on Dallas On Demand Sports Talk Network. You can check out more Cowboys articles and Mavericks articles over at adcsports.com/Dallas. Tonight on Primetime, as always, brought to you by our friends over at Freeman Hyundai. We will talk more about them on the ride of the week in a few moments here on the show. But tonight, we will talk about the positional battle that we've already heard of over the next few weeks and months. And I always love this time of the year, even if it's the most difficult one as a football fan, as a football, sicko, because you don't have a lot of new football content. But I also like when we start to have several discussions about the roster. I've recently put together my first 53-man roster projection. I will publish it soon enough on adcsports.com. We will talk about it at some point here throughout the week on the show. But I like having these discussions. The Cowboys let us have an early one because they have declared a battle at offensive center, and I'm excited to discuss it at length. Because basically, after the NFL draft, Stephen Jones said that they expect Matt Farniok to challenge Tyler Viadish for the starting center spot. Now, I like the optimism, Samuel, because Samuel says it's not a battle. It's JC Tretter's job. I will tell you something. I like the optimism, Samuel, but JC in Dallas is not happening. I don't think that is. But, here's where it gets interesting, though. I think that's where it feels to me that Cowboys Nation is getting this whole thing wrong. Because think about it. The Cowboys passed on Tyler Linderbaum in the first round. And, we were upset at first. Over the last few days, we've gotten a little bit, at peace with the Tyler Smith pick. I know that Skywalker this morning, talked about the attitude era. And we're understanding the Tyler Smith pick now. But a lot of people have kind of felt that this news on the starting center position being up for grabs is a knock on Tyler Viadish. And I don't know that that is the case. I think that this has more to do with how promising Matt Farniok's development has been behind the scenes. We'll talk about it tonight. Let's see some of your comments here in the meantime. Skywalker still says, I'm still cracking up. What is up, Sky? I'm still cracking up. Toxic has my face as a profile pic, man. Toxic Tom, has your morning host, Skywalker Steele, as his profile pic. And we joked about it on Friday night, Sky said, that feels to me like I made it. So that is awesome for sure. So let me ask you a question. Now that we know that the Cowboys starting spot is up for grabs, it feels to me like there are three main characters that we'll discuss. Tyler Viadish, Matt Farniok, and of course, one of Cowboys Nation's favorite undrafted free agents, Alec Lindstrom. Just let me know in the chat. Trust your gut. What's your gut feeling? Who starts at center for the Cowboys in 2022? Because it does feel like Cowboys Nation was a little bit disappointed when the Cowboys didn't pick Tyler Linderbaum, even if it wasn't a surprise, because I think no one was expecting them to take the center out of Iowa. He wasn't in the 30 visits. We know that the Cowboys like measurables, they like arm length, they like height, and Linderbaum wasn't really a player that would check off those boxes, even if we like that, possibility for Dallas in our minds. Well, you let me know your answers on who do you think will be the Cowboys starting center when the time comes in September. Let me talk to you about our friends over at freemanhyundai.com, because the ride of the week is the Hyundai Palisade, and we're talking about a third row sitting vehicle. It comes with towing, capable with trailer sway control. It's got, of course, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, blind spot collision avoidance, and of course, backup camera and rear parking sensors. It's a spacious vehicle. Make sure that you check out the interiors, because let me tell you something, the interiors for the Palisade are pretty unique. So go check them out over at freemanhyundai.com. The Palisade starts at $38,595. You can check out all the new versions over at freemanhyundai.com. Again, that is freemanhyundai.com. Surprisingly, it seems to me that there are a lot of, different answers in the chat. Shane Carter goes with Alec Lindstrom. Dallas Young also shouts out the Boston College Center. Samuel Rose says, Connor McGovern, looking at y'all like, hey, McGovern, do you think, it was interesting during the press conference, the Cowboys pretty much didn't mention him at all, right? Farniok or Lindstrom says Danny Savage, so basically ruling out Biadish over here. Toxic Tom gives Biadish some credit. Griff as well. Biadish job to lose. First half of the season, he played very well, says Nicholas, which is something that I agree. Let me give you my answer, but before I do that, let's talk about the true reason why the Cowboys have a competition going on at center. It's not about Tyler Biadish struggling. I really believe that isn't the case. I think it's all about Matt Farniok's development. Now, we know that Farniok is a pretty good athlete. And on the screen, you have his relative athletic score, which is high, 9.91. And we know about the 10-yard split. We know about the vertical jump, the three-cone drills. We've known this since Matt Farniok was picked in the 7th round of the 2022 NFL Draft. Not only that, but we also were able to watch Farniok up close when he played the Eagles in the regular season finale, and he had a pretty dominant performance. And people will say, yeah, they were backups, but still, it's the NFL. Farniok was playing against some pretty good competition there, and it's very clear that the Cowboys liked his development. Not only that, but what have we heard about Farniok during this offseason? Because we've seen a lot of praise for the young center. We've seen Joe Philbin go out there and talk about how he's put the work in, how he's always working to get better and improving. So I think that the Cowboys declaring the offensive center position open for competition is about Farniok, and it's not about Tyler Biadish struggling. Now, here is where I get into Alec. Because, listen, I like undrafted free agents as much as the next guy. But I will confess that I might be in the minority here. But I feel like Cowboys Nation is being a little bit too optimistic when it comes to Alec. Statistically, no biases, no priors about any specific player. We know how hard it is for a non-drafted free agent, no matter the name, no matter the guaranteed money he gets, it's hard for an undrafted free agent to make the roster. And some people are already making him the starter. So I hesitate on that. I would like to be proven wrong because I like undrafted free agent stories. However, I wouldn't say that Alec is ready to compete for the starting spot. He's not your ideal athlete. He lacks the size. He lacks the arm length. So he's not your pro ready kind of offensive center either. So I know I'm in the minority here, but I would pump the brakes a little bit when it comes to Alec. I think this is all about Matt Farniok, and I think he has a legit shot at fighting for the job with Tyler Viadic. I would love to be wrong though, again, because I like those stories when underdogs are able to thrive, especially as rookies, right? Francisco says there will be competition along the line, and the only ones safe are Smith and Martin. I would love to see some competition at right tackle and left guard as well. I, however, do feel like it's pretty set. And I have some questions that I would like to ask an offensive line expert, and we'll see if we can get that sometime in the near future about offensive line development. But I do think that it feels like Tyler Smith is your starter at the left guard, and I would be very surprised if the Cowboys are not set with Terrence Steele at right tackle. I know we like the idea of competition, but if the Cowboys let Lyle Collins go without being 100% in on Terrence Steele, then what are we doing here, right? So it feels to me that in reality it's only the center position that's up for grabs for the Dallas Cowboys. Russell says, does Tyler Smith go to Connor's spot? Yeah, I would say that is going to be the case. Toxic Tom says, get Frederick out of retirement if Bruce Wayne can come back. Man, I hate the fact that Travis Frederick doesn't play football anymore. Him and Andrew Luck are two guys that every once in a while I will randomly remember that they don't play football anymore. And I will get pissed and my day will be ruined. I'm obviously kidding, but it is so random that they stopped playing so early in their careers for different reasons and very valid reasons, of course, but still one of those things that makes you think about how different perspective can be for every single player. So there you go. I think that the Cowboys will hold that competition, thinking of Matt Farniok rather than Alec, or rather than being concerned about Tyler Biadic's performance. And I think that the Cowboys are higher on their centers than most people are. And I think it's pretty promising because you have the knowledge of Farniok's athleticism and potential upside. Because we had this conversation last night. When we talk about athletic scores, when we talk about testing, spider charts from mock draftable and all of that, we're not talking about players, we're talking about athletes. But these numbers, these stats and information shed some light on how the potential and upside look for every single player. So it's promising. To me, it's promising, and it's good news that the Cowboys are going to hold this conversation. Richard says, what about Josh Ball? Can he convert to center? I don't think that Ball has played center ever before. I think Ball will be more in the conversation to be your swing tackle rather than playing inside. Interesting competition, by the way. Jerry Jones, one of the things that they said after the draft was that they're not going to be looking for a swing tackle in the market, which means that they're all in both Josh Ball and Matt Waletzko. I would take McGovern at center, says Jared. I don't know about that. They tried him. Bruce says, what if they try McGovern at center? They kind of made a run at that experiment, didn't they, in 2021? And for some reason, they didn't go on with it. And I don't think that McGovern's play at guard was promising at all. I actually, and you guys know this if you watched Primetime at the time, I was pretty upset that they had benched Connor Williams. I know that center is a different position, but I do think that it tells us a lot that the Cowboys are not even talking about McGovern at this point. I'm guessing right now, spoiler alert, that he finds his way into the roster. I would be surprised if he doesn't because of the position flex, maybe. But I did not see him competing for a starting spot at this point. Sure, he will at left guard because what if Tyler Smith doesn't work out immediately and the Cowboys have to wait not only to play him at tackle, but maybe even at guard. But I don't know that the Cowboys would feel comfortable at playing McGovern at center. Not after they made the experiment and then nothing came out of that. Speaking of guard and speaking of the offensive line and center and all of that, let's talk a little bit about Cowboys needs because there has been a lot of criticism going around about a Cowboys draft. Some say that Williams was drafted too high. Some say that Smith was also a reach and all of that. But I think that when you sit down and look at it closely, and we did last night, you kind of realize that the Cowboys covered all of their needs, that their top needs, not all of them, of course. So I guess my question for you guys in the chat is, do you agree or disagree that the Cowboys covered their top needs in the draft? Heading into last week, we looked at, in whatever order you wanted to, and actually that's kind of wrong in the graphic. I'm sorry about that. I didn't mean to type offensive tackle at the top. I meant to type left guard, edge rusher, wide receiver, and tight end. They kind of went for it because they got their offensive lineman in the first, in that order too, which is funny. Edge rusher in the second, wide receiver in the third, and then tight end in the fourth. I don't know if the players will pan out. We don't know if they will work or if in 3 years we'll look back at this class and say, boy, that class sucked. We don't know. The future is for another day, and we'll debate it at some point in this offseason, I'm sure. But they did go and address each and every single one of their needs. Some of your answers here. Primetime Phil agrees. Gregory agrees. Kenneth over at Facebook agrees as well. Covered them, says Sean, but it is a cheap quilt. Agrees, says Bruce, for the top needs, but there's still a few. Stephen White agrees too. Tommy says, I strongly disagree. Did they add players? Yes. But did they get the right ones? No. So I will tell you what. I think my answer is agree. Maybe with a question mark, because indeed we don't know about Sam Williams, but we do know that he will play with Dante Fowler and Dorrance Armstrong. So it's not like the Cowboys are betting on Williams to take over at edge rusher and do his thing by himself for 3 downs. That is not going to be Williams' role. Tyler Smith is the biggest question mark because we don't know Tyler Smith, the left guard. We simply don't. We literally have never seen him play guard. He was exclusively a left tackle for Tulsa. But he's expected to start at left guard. Jalen Tolbert, give me the check mark there. I'm excited about Tolbert, to be honest. Tight end, I would much rather have Cooper, yeah, but hey, they got Tolbert. That's what matters right now. And at tight end, I think they also kind of nailed it because although they didn't take one of the top tight ends in this class, you're not expecting any of these guys to be your starting tight end. Dalton Schultz is your starting tight end. Forget about after 2022. Right now, they did get their tight end too, which is what they needed, especially because they want to play 12 personnel. They want to have 2 tight ends on the field to run the football and to throw the football, not only to improve the running game. So I will say that I agree. Although we have some question marks about some of these players. Now, this is where it gets interesting, and this is what I wanted to talk about before we get out of here. What is the biggest need for the Cowboys, the biggest remaining need at the moment. Because I was putting together the 53-man roster projection, and I cannot wait to share it with you. But to me, the answer to that question is pretty clear. Jared says center. And I would say that, tying this together with the starting topic of tonight's show, the Cowboys will disagree with that. The Cowboys will tell you that not only do they have a starting center in Tyler Viadish, but they also think that Farniok could start. Again, I think that the Cowboys think differently about center than we do. Who's right, who's wrong, we don't know. But what we know about Viadish is that he's been a decent starter for the Cowboys. Cowboys Nation might have been a little bit spoiled thinking about the Fredericks of the world, the Martins of the world, the Tyrants of the world. But he's been a decent starter so far for the Cowboys. And Farniok, apparently, they like their development. So I will say, and I will also disagree with that. The film says absolutely not. I think that we're being too harsh on Viadish. I don't think that he was bad at all. I think, again, that he was a decent starter, even though you could have used an upgrade. Which is why I would have loved to see Tyler Linderbaum in the Cowboys, by the way. Let's see some of your answers. Danny Savage goes with GM, which, is always one of the featured answers. Linebacker for Bruce. Jeremy says free safety. And the Cowboys do have, Malik Hooker, Israel Mukwamu, who's a versatile defensive back. Donovan Wilson, who's done a little bit of both. But maybe you don't have that blue chip free safety. Adam says new offensive coordinator, head coach for Charlene Evans, receiver still for Joe, which is an answer that I don't hate, actually. Because you have, especially because say that Michael Gallup is not ready for week 1. Then you have CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Tolbert, James Washington. And then after those 3, you're getting into Simi Fehoko territory, TJ Basher territory, maybe an undrafted free agent. So maybe if we're talking about depth at receiver, I don't hate this answer. Nicholas says linebacker, and this is the one that I agree with. If you ask me what's the biggest need for the Cowboys today, I would say linebacker. And this is how things stand on the roster. I did not include Damon Clark because he will not be ready for September. And I excluded also undrafted free agents just because of what I was saying earlier. Statistically speaking, without priors, without biases, undrafted free agents don't make 53-man rosters. Sure, some do, and maybe you can shoot for one undrafted free agent to make the team. But overall, it's too early to tell, in my opinion. So this is the linebackers that make the linebacker room for the Cowboys right now. Micah Parsons, Jabril Cox, Leighton Vander Esch, Luke Gifford, Devin Harper, and Devontae Vaughn. Let's talk about it. Micah is elite. We know that by now. He is a true elite defender. I know it's been 1 season, but man, that was impressive. However, he also has pass rush responsibilities, and he will continue to have those. So forget about a full-time linebacker in Micah. He will do a little bit of everything, which is the right thing to do. After Parsons, you have Jabril Cox, who is a question mark. Listen, I love Jabril's potential. I think he will do a good job. But here are the facts. He hasn't started at all in the NFL. And he has some question marks as a prospect. And he's coming off an ACL injury. So to say that we are super confident on Jabril Cox would be maybe optimism. Then with Leighton Vander Esch, I like the contract value and all of that. But again, a player that you're getting a little bit of inconsistency along with the ride. Gifford, Harper, players that will be more in special teams than on defense. So I think that looking at the roster, this is where your biggest need lies. Mike says Stephen White. Tommy says Gabriel will be a solid starter. Yeah, exactly. Listen, I like him too, and I think he will also be a pretty good starter for the Cowboys. I hope so. We know about the athleticism, we know about the range, about the speed, and Dan Quinn wants to feature speed on the Dallas Cowboys, on their defense. But have we seen Jabril Cox? Like, truly seen him for an entire game? Not really. So I would like to see a little bit more depth, a little bit of more guarantee on the Cowboys. It will be interesting. It will be interesting to watch. That would be, in my opinion, the biggest need for the Cowboys. After that, you could also make the case for kicker because the Cowboys have Chris Nagar and Gary Vi, the undrafted free agent, ready to fight for the kicker spot. But at the end of the day, two kickers that have no NFL experience to talk about. After that, I would say, well, yeah, the depth at wide receiver indeed, and maybe a true number 3 running back. Lauren Michael says, where is Damon Clark? As I said, just in case you missed that part, I didn't include Clark in the graphic because he's not going to be ready for week 1. And since we're talking biggest needs, I am thinking about week 1. Loved the Clark pick, though. I absolutely loved the Clark pick in the 5th round. I think that was a steal at 176. And I think that guy could start at some point for the Cowboys. Let's see. Chalk says, Mo, you don't have to see anything. Have you seen Leighton Vander Esch? Sorry, play. Cox will be way better. Well, the thing is, I'm not comparing one with the other. I'm just talking about who will be on the field. They might both be on the field when you have Parsons rushing, maybe actually. Jeremy says, Clark is my favorite pick. I respect that. It sucks that we will have to wait a little bit, but I respect that. Toxic Tom says, Mo, this feels like a typical Jason Garrett roster, top heavy with shaky depth. I don't know if I agree with that. Let's try to break it down. Because I don't know if I agree with this. Do you guys agree with this? Let me know in the chat. Do you agree or disagree with Toxic Tom Downey burner account? It's getting longer and longer, the username. But Mo, this feels like a typical Jason Garrett roster, top heavy with shaky depth. I don't know, man. Let's talk about wide receiver, for example. Lamb, Gallup, Tolbert, and then Washington is your number 4 wide receiver. I don't feel bad about that. I don't feel bad about the depth at offensive line either. Maybe at tackle, I do have some questions. But let's see. Let's see what Josh Ball looks like. Then at defensive end, edge rusher, Lawrence, Armstrong, Fowler, Williams, Golston. Golston is basically your defensive end, what, 5? Or Basham is? And Parsons is also rushing the passer, and we're not even counting him. Osa, Gallimore, Watkins, Hill. At corner, you have, I don't know what will happen with Joseph, but let's say that Joseph and Wright are your depth at cornerback. I'm not saying it's the best depth in the NFL. I don't know if I'm as concerned about the depth, though, as Toxic Tom is. I don't know if I am. It does, as Nicholas, but at least they made some kind of effort to get better. Best we can do sitting at 24. So I think that my criticism, now that the offseason is essentially, of course, it's not essentially over, but the portion of the offseason in which teams get better is over. And my criticism remains what happened at the beginning of it. Letting go of Mark Cooper, letting Lyle Collins walk. That's what I still don't like at all about the Cowboys offseason. Other than that, I do like the draft class. I do feel good about the roster overall. I do think this is a winning team and the favorite to win the division, with the Eagles maybe being the major threat in the division. There you go. Full Canelli says, finally caught Mo's offseason / draft hot take. Are we talking about the depth here? Might be. Hey, might be. I don't know. I think that sometimes we suffer a little bit from exposure bias. And that means we get caught up thinking about our team and we kind of forget that other teams are in a very similar spot. That would be kind of my take on this whole thing. I think that the Cowboys have decent depth at defensive end, at the offensive line and cornerback and wide receiver pretty much. Even though I would definitely like someone else, and I see that as a need, just one more wide receiver maybe if Gallup is hurt. But when Gallup is healthy, I feel good about this group. Danny Savage says, we're not sweeping the division plus a much tougher schedule. Well, not sweeping the division is not the equivalent of not having depth, though. You know? Oh, no. Mo, if you close your eyes and listen real hard, you can still hear Garrett clapping, says Toxic Tom. Yeah, Tommy is right. There is no one more toxic than Tom, LMAO. All right, guys, that will be it for tonight. I appreciate you guys tuning in. To sum it up, I think that the biggest need for the Cowboys right now is linebacker, kicker, and depth, maybe at wide receiver, at least for when Michael Gallup is hurt, if he's going to miss significant time. But linebacker takes the cake, in my opinion. That is a big-time need right there for the Cowboys. I don't know if they can do something about that before the season. We'll see. As always, Primetime brought to you by our friends over at freemanhyundai.com. I appreciate you, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure that you hit the like button, share the stream. If you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, let your friends know about Primetime. Mo says, Toxic Tom, when do you graduate, man? I graduate, and I will show you something cool on Wednesday with the One Cool Thing segment that we do every week. I graduate on June, close to the end of June. So we're close. We are close. Thank you guys for tuning in to the show. Thank you for asking, Tom, by the way. And I will see you tomorrow night. It will be a fun week of content here on Primetime, including at some point in the week, the look at my way too early 53-man roster projection. Thank you guys. Make sure you smash the like button. That allows us to put this show in front of more Cowboys fans. And I will see you tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Central. Thank you guys.